So I think it was Mike Tyson who said everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face, and maybe it was someone before him where he got it. But the idea that everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face is all well and good. The question is, and I think the biggest question is, what's your contingency? What's plan B if plan A fails? And I think a lot of times in business, a lot of times in life, in parenting, whatever it may be, in coaching, you have a game plan and you go out, and then all of a sudden something outside of your control, the punch, manipulates the situation or changes the status quo, and you have to be able to pivot. And so, I battle a lot with planning and over planning, only to realize that something outside the control is the contingency that we didn't prepare for. It could be as simple as planning an event and you don't have a tent and it rains, right? That's outside your control. So what is the contingency in the event something isn't going according to plan? And I think the expression that you have a plan until you get punched in the face is real, because a punch in the face comes out of nowhere and it hurts like hell. What can you do to pivot in that moment and to kind of resurrect whatever the original plan was? I use a lot of this in my coaching because we may go out in whatever the game scenario is, and we have this game plan that we want to achieve, and all of a sudden, if it's baseball or softball, they're not throwing strikes, and you got runners on base, and you have to be able to pivot in real time and put the pieces in place. So I think you have to have a very good idea of what you want to accomplish, right? Begin with the end in mind. And so if you know the end result that you want, you're going to start somewhere, but you've got to have your pivot points along the way. Even in the financial planning that we do, we have what we call evolutionary checkpoints, and they're called evolutionary checkpoints for a reason, because life evolves, things change. People have different targets at 40 than they do at 50 and they do at 60. And sometimes that thing that you thought was most important at 40 becomes obsolete at 50, and you want to plan for something entirely different, or 60 or 70, whatever it may be. And so you have to evolve your game plans. And so, and any plan, whether it's in sport or whether it's in business or whether it's in life, you have to be a little bit flexible so that you can make those choices. I think one of the things that we suffer from today because of the fallout from COVID and all the stress that we've all been under is we've forgot how to kind of roll with the punches and pivot and make that next decision and make that next step. So I think a lot of times we get so locked into the plan or the idea of what we thought was going to happen, and all of a sudden it doesn't happen, and it becomes internalized and devastating, and you get depressed, and you're everything is lost. So I think part of being a good leader or being successful is not being as rigid as you may want to be, because you may end up getting punched in the face. And if you do, that doesn't mean you're down and out. It means you got to get back up and you got to try something different, right? So if the plan fails because you get punched in the face, what's the next move you can make, right? Going back to relentless solution focus, what's one thing in that minute you can do to improve the situation? Whether it is a literal punch in the face, or whether it is something didn't go the way you wanted it to go, or something didn't work out the way you wanted. What can you do to make the best of that situation, continue to move forward and move on, right? So I think sometimes we've got to throttle back on how rigid we expect everything to go, right? Look at planning a party and a couple people don't show up, or somebody spills the guacamole dip, right? Well, get something else out of the fridge and serve it. It's not the end of the world. I think we're stuck right now because all things seem to be closing in at different times. So again, I think having a contingency plan is important, but it cannot be a rigid contingency. Things can go, different things can happen at different times. You got to be able to pivot. So I think it's more important to know your pivot points and the evolution of a plan that matters, right? I think it was George Patton who said a good plan executed today is better than a perfect plan executed tomorrow. And I think that's that same vein where, you have to be willing to go away from the original game plan to find that success. But you should begin with that end goal in mind. And if you do, there's more than one way to get to that end result. It may not be the way you scripted it from the very beginning, but don't get so stuck in rigid that you can't be flexible in your plan.